That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I think we are going to have one central challenge in Dynasty rookie drafts this year. Something that I don't have a great answer for. I think it's going to be an obstacle that really causes way too much debate this offseason in Dynasty Fantasy Football. So please, as I talk through this in this video, if you have an opinion, if you have a way you think we should be approaching this, go down to the comment section. Let me hear it, because I don't have a strong stance, but I want to outline the exact issue we are going to be faced with. I want to look at these wide receiver landing spots. But of course, before we get into it, please go down there, drop that like, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, and go get our Dynasty Research book. Go get our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide over there on flockfantasy.com. Of course, there you can support the channel. And if you don't want to go out there and spend $20-something for our Dynasty Research book, you could go and just make a $10 deposit on Underdog Fantasy. On Underdog Fantasy, you can go get into real money fantasy football drafts. You can go bet on some player props. And at the same time, you are going to get our Dynasty Research book when you make your first deposit. They will match your deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. And you get our Dynasty rankings, our Dynasty rookie rankings. There's no reason for you not to go deposit $10 on Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK. Find the link in the description of this video. Find it in the comment section. Nothing supports this channel more. But that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive in to this situation. And what I want to do is I want to pull up the NFL draft order. I want us to walk team by team and just kind of figure out where these wide receivers are going off the board, because obviously pick 22, pick 28, pick 29, pick 30. Those are the beautiful, the cream of the crop landing spots. You can't find a better landing spot. I mean, if you look over the past 3 years in NFL drafts, when have we ever seen a team with an elite quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, with an elite quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, have really no answer at the wide receiver position? Now, I know Mahomes, obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster, y'all know I like our guy Juju, but still, it's not like Juju Smith-Schuster's already a top 5 wide receiver and going to replace Tyreek Hill 1 for 1. No, there is a ton of volume available in this Kansas City Chiefs offense, especially if we look at the fact that Travis Kelsey is 33 years old. Travis Kelsey going to be 33 this season. How much longer realistically does he have of just dominating the target share in Kansas City? I agree. He's probably going to be a tight end that stays around for a very long time, but are we going to be expecting him to be 35 years old, accounting for over 20% of this team's offense? I think that's a really large assumption. And if Travis Kelsey isn't going to be that elite level tight end 2 to 3 years from now, where's that production going to go? Because obviously the last taste of Patrick Mahomes we've had, I mean, he was looking like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. The last half of football that he played against the Cincinnati Bengals, it was horrible. It was atrocious. But still, if we take a step back, if we look at Mahomes since 2018, we can all get on board saying minimum. It doesn't matter who you are. Patrick Mahomes is a top 3 NFL quarterback today, will be a top 3 NFL quarterback next year, will be a top 3 NFL quarterback the year after, will be a top 3 NFL quarterback the year after that. There will be production in this offense. So, of course, that makes this a beautiful landing spot. But it's not even as good as the landing spot which we're seeing in Green Bay, because you are getting Davante Adams leaving behind 32% of the passing offense in Green Bay. You are getting 2 wide receiver leaving. You are getting that wide receiver going over to Kansas City in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now with MVS obviously not commanding that much volume, primarily just a field stretching option, but still, there are so many snaps available at the wide receiver position in Green Bay. And I think we can all get behind Aaron Rodgers being a top 3 to 5 quarterback today, next year, and probably the year after. So we have these 2 spots, these 2 teams at the back end of the first round with 4 picks to potentially bring in some of these receivers. And we are combining this unique situation, which we rarely ever see, with the fact that this is a fantastic draft class. Now, the issue is these wide receivers aren't going to make it back to Green Bay. They're not going to make it back to Kansas City. The top tier, the elite level prospects, guys like Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jameson Williams, I would be shocked if any of those players fell to pick 22. Now, of course, there's the outside chance someone like Jameson Williams ends up falling, and if that happens, that's fantastic. But I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, yeah, it's easy. You're just going to get Drake London, pick 22 to the Green Bay Packers. And I'm sitting here going, do you not see what's happening in the middle rounds as well? The NFL is dying for receivers. I think this is because we've seen the league pretty much consistently over the past decade get away from the run, realizing that throwing the ball is how you win championships. Throwing the ball with efficiency is how you drive the best offense in the NFL. And they've also just ran way more 3 wide receiver sets. If you don't have a quality third receiver on the field, you're doing yourself a massive disservice in today's age in the NFL. This is why you get the monstrous contract for Devontae Adams. You get the monstrous contract for Tyreek Hill, which I know you all are going to say, Mason, they're the top 2 receivers in the NFL. Of course, they're going to demand massive deals. Well, this is why you get Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk gets paid in Jacksonville because the Jacksonville Jaguars are looking around saying, hell, we kind of see how important receivers are. And on top of this, I mean, these guys are going to be pushed up NFL draft boards. Because if we look at mid-round 1, before we get to the range of Green Bay, before we get to the range of Kansas City, Buffalo's in there. Buffalo needs a receiver. Arizona's in there. Arizona needs a wide receiver as well. Dallas could bring someone in with no Amari Cooper. Like that back in around 1. Those are the dream landing spots. But mid-round 1, these are the teams that could go wide receiver, and it wouldn't really shock anyone. You have the Giants at 7. I know the Giants really aren't mocked to go receiver that often, but possibly they go F it. We love Garrett Wilson. Let's take Garrett Wilson here. Probably not likely, but still. The Atlanta Falcons at 8. Are you expecting Olamide Zaccheaus to be the wide receiver 1 in Atlanta this upcoming season? Cordell Patterson to be their running back 1 and wide receiver 1? It would be hard for Atlanta to pass on Garrett Wilson. Seattle at 9, obviously passing on a receiver there. But then you have the New York Jets at 10. The Jets need to give Zack Wilson every reason to succeed. They need to leave no excuses on the table for Zack Wilson this year. You'd easily see them going wide receiver. The Commanders, pick 11. Who do they have as their wide receiver 2? Curtis Samuel? Curtis Samuel couldn't get on the field last year. I don't think you can rely on Samuel going forward with the injuries. Then beyond that, you have Philadelphia, pick 15. Philadelphia, we know this is a team that's had wide receiver need after wide receiver need after wide receiver need. I mean, pretty much every offseason for the past 5 years. You have the Saints, pick 16. The Saints have Michael Thomas. We don't know if Michael Thomas is coming back. And beyond Michael Thomas, they have nobody. We have the Eagles, pick 18 again. The Saints, pick 19. You have the Steelers, who just lost out on Juju Smith-Schuster. You have the Patriots. I know they bring in Devontae Parker, but still, can we be that confident with the situation? You have all those teams before we get to the Packers, before we get to the Cardinals. So as dynasty managers, we need to prepare for wide receivers like Garrett Wilson to go to the Atlanta Falcons, for Drake London to go to the Jets, for Jameson Williams to go to the New Orleans Saints, for Chris Olave to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, for Treylon Burks to probably fall to what we want in the Green Bay Packers. Who knows? Maybe Burks gets pushed up the board as well. So we are going to be in a position where the top tier wide receivers are finding bad landing spots. And the best landing spots we probably have ever seen are going to, I don't want to say subpar talents at the wide receiver position, but are going to players that maybe aren't deserving, players that aren't in the same tier as those elite level options. Someone like Jahan Dotson is the perfect example. Dotson finds himself in Kansas City, pick 29, stepping into an every down role with Patrick Mahomes, with Travis Kelsey not there for that much longer, with Juju Smith-Schuster on a 1-year deal, with Marquez Valdes-Scantling as the field stretching option. And we see Drake London go to Houston at pick 13. How are we supposed to react? Now, historically speaking, it has been best to take the talent We've seen overall NFL franchises, we've seen overall situations dramatically swing season to season, and situations change. If you take a player you know is more talented, I'm pretty confident saying Garrett Wilson's more talented than Sky Moore. I'm pretty confident in saying Drake London is more talented than George Pickens. If you take those players with the talent, A, they may be able to just straight up overcome a bad situation, or B, maybe it's only a bad situation for a year, and then all of a sudden you have Russell Wilson getting traded over to the Denver Broncos, and everything's okay. So it's an interesting thought process. We've seen the mistake being made before, back in 2019, when people pushed A.J. Brown to the back end of the first round. If y'all remember, back in that 2019 class, everybody had A.J. Brown, N'Keal Harry in the same tier as wide receiver 1 in that class. You have N'Keal Harry going over to New England with Tom Brady, and you have A.J. Brown going to a failing Tennessee Titans team with Marcus Mariota. Now, of course, everything changed. Ryan Tannehill takes over halfway in, but that pushed N'Keal Harry up to be the 102, the 101, and it pushed A.J. Brown in those super flex drafts in particular to fall down, and all of a sudden, I believe I drafted him in a couple leagues at like the 109. And of course, you see those situations change dramatically overnight. We saw this in 2020. Remember, people are excited about Jalen Reagor going to the Philadelphia Eagles. People are excited about it. And a wide receiver that was in a similar tier to Jalen Reagor going into the draft, in T. Higgins, goes to the Cincinnati Bengals. And you're like, okay, well, T. Higgins going to the Bengals. You already got Tyler Boyd there. We don't really even know who Joe Burrow is going to be. Can Joe Burrow support these weapons? And now we see how that plays. Betting on that talent, when those situations can change, when the perceptions of NFL offenses can change, 9 times out of 10 has been the right call if you look historically. But we need to possibly reconsider the historical trends that we have with betting on talent over situation, because this Green Bay spot is looking juicy. This Kansas City Chiefs spot, it's looking pretty damn good. This isn't just a marginal spot where you're going into New England on a team that wants to run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. This is going to Green Bay, which you know will be a top 10 passing offense, where your number 1 wide receiver alongside you is Allen Lazard, where you have no competition for targets whatsoever. So I think it's obviously going to be dependent, but the receivers we are probably going to see going to these teams like the Green Bay Packers, like the Kansas City Chiefs, I think it will be the tier of Dotson. I think you could see Pickens or Christian Watson going here. And if we're looking at these wide receivers in particular, with Dotson, I have a hard time seeing how he gets vaulted up to having that elite level ceiling. Now, Dotson, I actually think that he is a higher floor player than someone like George Pickens, as crazy as that sounds. I mean, with Dotson, we saw him go out there and he commanded over 40% of the passing offense at Penn State. I mean, Dotson, he was a fantastic wide receiver his junior and his senior year there. But can I look at his overall profile, the fact that he didn't break out till his junior season, the fact that he stayed all 4 years, and the fact that, I mean, KJ Hamler, Pat Freiermuth were dominating him his first and second year there. Can I look at that profile and say that he has a higher ceiling than George Pickens, who broke out at Georgia year 1, his freshman season, that is 6'3", that ran a blazing 40-yard dash? If we got Pickens to Kansas City, if we got Pickens to Green Bay and he hit his ceiling, he would have the ceiling to be a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy. Where I'm unsure if we can say the same thing with Dotson. And keep in mind, if you pull up my rankings, I have Dotson and Pickens ranked back to back. I mean, a lot of drafts, I would probably go with Dotson over Pickens based on him having an overall complete profile, based on him probably going higher in the NFL draft, based on us having a better understanding of the player that he actually is. But if we're talking about these wide receiver prospects just hitting that elite level, George Pickens has that upside. Christian Watson. Watson's interesting because obviously stayed all 4 years at a small school. But one thing that I have found writing our Dynasty research book is if you are going to get away with staying all 4 years at a school, you either need 2 things. You need that school to just be loaded with wide receiver talent, like Chris Olave at Ohio State with 3 other round 1 wide receivers on the roster. Or you need to be from a really small school that usually teams aren't going to take you seriously unless you just have ridiculous production, like Cooper Kupp. I mean, with Cooper Kupp, you go to Pro Football Reference, just the college reference side. You're not even going to find Cooper Kupp's college statistics on there because the school's so small. So I would be willing to write off Christian Watson staying that last year at North Dakota State, possibly a little bit more than I would be with Dotson. Now with Christian Watson, you can see the size-adjusted athleticism. He goes to Kansas City. He is their prototypical Alpha X wide receiver. You can see people getting excited about that profile. But as we talk about this, I think I am probably going to be leaning on the side of just betting on the talent, of betting on Drake London with the New York Jets, betting on, Garrett Wilson with the Atlanta Falcons, because let's view it in a different light. Let's say you go, okay, I know that, yes, the Atlanta Falcons, horrible landing spot, and Marcus Mariota is the quarterback right now. You're competing for targets with Kyle Pitts, and you're going to be for the next decade. Let's pass on Garrett Wilson to take a player that we perceive to be a lesser talent in George Pickens if George Pickens goes pick 29 to the Kansas City Chiefs. He goes pick 28 to the Green Bay Packers. Let's play this out in our mind. What would have to happen for that Atlanta Falcons situation to change? If we just try to figure out realistically, how does Garrett Wilson have access to an elite level ceiling, similar to what we saw with, say, A.J. Brown vaulting up his rookie season despite him landing in a very bad spot in Tennessee? Garrett Wilson would probably have to be a pretty good wide receiver. That's the first thing that obviously has to happen. Garrett Wilson has to have the talent that we are projecting him to coming into the NFL draft. But you can say that with all these players. For this situation, all we would need essentially in Atlanta is a quarterback upgrade. Play this out. The Atlanta Falcons were a bottom 10 team this year with Matt Ryan. Now, with no Matt Ryan, with the coaching staff that just failed the year prior, is it out of the range of outcomes for all of a sudden the Atlanta Falcons to get a top 3 pick in next year's draft class? No, that's a real possibility. Then what if all of a sudden they're able to bring in Bryce Young, they're able to bring in CJ Stroud, and then you have a top-end quarterback in an offense where Kyle Pitts is going to demand a significant amount of attention, and Garrett Wilson is the unquestioned wide receiver 1 on that team. What happens if the Atlanta Falcons find a way to go out there and move to get Jimmy Garoppolo next year? If Garoppolo flashes and all of a sudden they're able to bring in a stable quarterback that's able to elevate the floor of the offense and allow someone, if they have the elite talent profile, to succeed. Let's go over to the scenario with Drake London going to the New York Jets, which would be a pretty bad landing spot at first. You look at a depth chart that has Elijah Moore. You look at a depth chart that has Corey Davis. You look at the fact that it looks like a bottom offense with Zack Wilson at the helm and how Zack Wilson failed his rookie season. But what if all of a sudden Zack Wilson, now that he has a couple extra weapons in New York, takes a step forward? And then that depth chart clears up in 2023, where they can look at that Corey Davis contract and say, hell, we can save $11 million if we just cut Corey Davis. And then all of a sudden, you're looking at Drake London being the wide receiver 1 potentially in an offense with a complementary piece in Elijah Moore, providing speed and playing in the slot with a quarterback that is a young foundational franchise player in Zack Wilson. You can see the same thing with someone like Chris Olave going to the Saints. Yeah, the Saints, they don't look like a great landing spot because, they have Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston in Tampa was fantastic, but we have to remember, Jameis Winston in New Orleans is a different scenario because if you're looking at New Orleans, this is a team that's not allowing Jameis Winston to go out there and be a D-gap quarterback and just chunk the ball down the field. They're treating him like a game manager. What would have to happen for this situation to change for Chris Olave's talent to shine through? We've already seen the team be extremely frustrated with Michael Thomas. What if they just moved on from Michael Thomas and then all of a sudden, Chris Olave is the only wide receiver with talent on this team? Or B, what if they go, you know what? New coaching staff. We don't have Sean Payton anymore. Jameis Winston, we watched you in Tampa. You do you. Go back to airing it out. Go back to being that D-gap quarterback. We don't have the same defense that we did previously. Maybe we're going to have to play catch up with these teams. I know we're going through and playing the what-if scenarios, but we have to view this through a range of outcomes situation. And I think if we are betting on range of outcomes, it's going to be better for us to take the more talented receivers, especially when you have guys like Drake London checking every single box. You have Garrett Wilson checking every single box, taking those players over lesser talents like George Pickens, like Christian Watson, like Jahan Dotson, even if they go to one of the beautiful spots like the Green Bay Packers or the Kansas City Chiefs. But let me know what y'all think of this. I mean, obviously, it's going to be one of the toughest things in Dynasty this offseason, one of the toughest things in Dynasty fantasy football, period. But yeah, again, thank you so much for checking out the video. Make sure you go down there, drop that like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and yeah, I will see y'all with the video tomorrow.